On today's episode of The Witness Room, I'm talking with my friend and brilliant filmmaker, Colette Ghunim. Colette is a filmmaker born and raised in Chicago, a Mexican mother, a Palestinian father, and a very American childhood sitting on top of both. Her first feature film is called Traces of Home and took 9 years to make. A film that paints the picture of the multi-layered story of what it means to be an immigrant. Colette takes her parents to their hometown in Palestine and Mexico to shed light on the journey that led each of them to be displaced. This conversation touches a deeper part of my own journey, and I found myself reflecting on it a lot afterwards. Like many, I've heard a lot of talk about inherited trauma or generational trauma, as many would call it, but rarely do I hear about inherited resilience, inherited strength, that the same bloodline that hands you down the wound also hands you down the spine to carry it. And I found Colette saying that plainly and from a place of empowerment, a perspective that I resonate deeply with. I personally was the one who left. My family is back home, so I sat in this conversation from the other side of it, asking the child of immigrants what the people who arrive miss or never get told. This is a conversation about two borders, one family, and what it looks like to turn the lens toward the people who raised you and ask them to feel something in front of you. And beyond that, it is a conversation about the search for identity and the healing of that inner child. And now, I bring you Colette. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you for saying yes to this conversation. Before we dive into the film and your work, can you give me a little bit of background?
Yes, gladly. So thank you so much, Malik, for having me. It's really an honor to get to be in conversation again. I am originally from Chicago. I was born and raised in the suburbs of Illinois, and my mom is Mexican and my dad is Palestinian. And so I grew up in a very American upbringing, and I've been working on this film that really explores that background that is called Traces of Home. And it's my first feature-length film. I do documentaries, and I'm now going deeper into the trauma healing world and more into mental health as well. So those are a bit about my background and then some of my passions too.
So how do you identify now, after seeing the film and the journey of kind of finding your identity and going deeper into who you are as a person, living between these two worlds of your parents' trauma and you're growing up in a home where your dad is Palestinian, your mom is Mexican, and not only are they just those nationalities, they are also human who experienced unique and painful journey. How do you find yourself in it?
Yes. So this journey has been a long one. It's been like 9 years in the making to make this film. And it really allowed me to figure out where was home for myself and understanding that my own experience as a child of immigrants and refugees is a very particular community and a particular identity in its own that has its own struggles and challenges and that needs its own healing from what is now I know is intergenerational trauma. And for me, you know, I consider myself a storyteller, and yet I didn't realize until really after the film premiered that it's also healing, that storytelling is not just as being a storyteller, but it's also being able to facilitate healing for others. So very grateful to have that as a major component of my work as well.
How did the film came to be? When did the idea originated?
Sure.
And how did you act on it?
Yes. So I started Traces of Home in 2017 with the family separations at the border and the refugee ban in the Arab world, and just felt so compelled to share my own parents' stories of forced migration. That both of them were forced to escape when they were children. My father was in the Nakba in 1948. His home was taken, and he never went back since he was 4 years old. And now he's 82. And then my mom was a survivor of domestic violence, of abuse, and my grandfather, her father, was an alcoholic, and so they also escaped from him when she was 8 years old, crossed the border, and never went back. And so I felt very compelled to share my own parents' stories of these really traumatic experiences in their childhood, and also being able to revisit that trauma and actually go into the wound by going back to Mexico and Palestine for the first time as a family to go find the childhood homes that they were forced to escape as children. And then along the journey, I started going to therapy for the first time. And that's where I started to realize that this disconnect to home was not just about the cultures, but it was actually my disconnect to my parents themselves, and realizing that I had to go on a much deeper inner journey of figuring out where was home for myself.
And how did that journey help you connect or not connect? What part of that kind of wall between you kind of went down, and which part is still up?
Ooh, very good. Okay. So yes, the film is all about walls. So thank you for bringing that up, Malik, around like the walls of Mexico and Palestine, but then also the inner walls that prevented me from feeling home at home. And so, you know, I think something that I really realized in making the film was that we have to be able to get through that wall, I had to actually face the pain of the trauma itself. And the film became my tool to be able to actually interview my brother, who became sort of like a mirror for me to talk about what was the dysfunction in my family and why we never felt like we could be our authentic selves at home. And realizing that these walls were so much bigger than just my family unit as well. And so I'm so grateful that because of this film, we were able to have such deep, vulnerable conversations that family members and parents and children usually never get to have. And it's been such a blessing to get to go deeper in that with my family. And also learning how to set boundaries. It's like, yes, we break down the walls, but then sometimes we still need to have those boundaries. And so learning how to set boundaries when I didn't feel safe to be myself, or I didn't feel like I was being treated in the way that I felt I wanted to be. And so those were some of the walls that I had to learn how to put up that were healthy to be able to deepen in relationship too. And then in terms of walls that are still there, yeah, I mean, it's still like a pattern of decades of an upbringing and patterns of dysfunction that are slowly being chipped away at. And so learning how to trust again, that specifically for my mom, like that she always had the best outcome desired for me, and yet still feeling like, oh, is it okay for me to actually share my emotions and share my feelings with her? That's something I'm still working through step by step. And yeah, very grateful to be in process always. Yes.
As I was watching the film, I was reminded by the Gibran Khalil Gibran's poem, "Your children aren't your children, they're the sons and daughters of lives longing for itself. They come through you, not from you. Although they're with you, they belong not to you." And I'm seeing that pattern throughout the film, and the journey of finding yourself beyond the expectation, beyond also the huge identities that you inherited from both of your parents and their own journey. It must be kind of finding yourself in the middle of a storm and trying to find what's up and what's down. And with that, I wonder which part of them do you carry and which part is yours?
Yes. A lot of times we are talking so much about intergenerational trauma, and yet we forget about intergenerational resilience and this ability that, as our parents who immigrated here, that they had to have so much strength and adaptability to be able to survive in this new country. And so I feel like the only reason that I'm able to be a filmmaker and to be able to pursue my own creative path is because they set that model for me of how to pursue my art and to go for my dreams and that kind of thing, that they were able to support that so fully for myself. And I'm so grateful that they had that resilience for the next generation, even back from my grandmother that didn't even know I was going to exist, and to make this film. And the other thing I would say that I'm very grateful for is the level of courage and strength of my grandmother, who was able to leave a very unhealthy situation to stop the cycles of trauma. And what a blessing it is and what a gift it is to be able to have her as a model, to live in a way that is authentic and true and rooted in the values that I want to also live in as well, to be of service in the world.
And what are these values?
Yeah, definitely. The big one is truth, and being able to finally live in truth and not be hiding anymore. That for a long time I felt like I had to be a shrunken version of myself, that I had to, that I was almost like I was a burden just to exist. And it's so hard to say that because it's like so many of us feel that as Black and brown people living in the US, that we've just been conditioned into this way of feeling like the other or less than. And to reclaim my inherent dignity has been essential. So living in truth is like the number one value for me. And then the second is, included in truth is also faith. And for me, this film has been my spiritual awakening, and being able to live in a way that is in devotion and in service to my creator. That is like the only reason I'm really here anymore. And that feels very clear for me too. And it was the faith that also got my grandmother out of that situation too. I know deeply. And I'd say the other big one for me is inclusion, and being able to make sure that everyone feels that dignity within themselves, no matter where they come from and their own backgrounds, that as long as people can feel welcome and included to be there in their authentic expression, that it feels like essential work to be embodying for myself as well.
I am going to go back to the same question, but I'll ask it in a different way to push you, kind of.
Okay.
So who are you beyond your parents' journey? Who are you truly beyond all of the stories that you inherited?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Malik. Yes, I guess here we can go into spirituality then, because one of the big learnings that I realized on this filmmaking path is that this entire material world is very temporary and very fleeting, and that I was seeking external fulfillments, external identities as a daughter, as a filmmaker, as a blank, 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 that could never fulfill me because I was always searching for it externally. And my spiritual journey really started by going within myself and realizing that there was something much more eternal inside of myself, and realizing, I'm going to speak from my own beliefs, that I am an eternal soul, and that this is just a covering of all the identities, and to come back to that truth that I am not this body, I am not this mind, even though I have these ethnic groups and these kinds of things, that there is an eternal part of me that is part of the divine, and that it feels very clear that it is boundless love. And so that's all I am when it comes to the essence of Source.
And how do you carry that in your own journey in this human plane that we are on?
Yeah.
How do you navigate the stories and your story itself?
Yeah. I'm a practitioner of Bhakti Yoga, which is the path of devotion, love and devotion. And it is very clear that if we do not do things in connection to a greater cause or a greater power, then it will not be the fulfillment that we are seeking. And so for me, I consider myself a very, very lowly servant of the Creator, that, I am here to be of service in the way that I can be, to continue to spread divine messages of love and of belonging, for us to remember where our true home is. And that Traces of Home is that spiritual journey back to the eternal. And that is my calling and purpose here, is for us to remember where we actually belong.
Yeah, I resonate with that in a different way, but the core of it is there. I always kind of anchor myself with this idea of when hardships show up, when challenges show up, and we're faced with all of these difficult conversations, difficult situations, and we feel the rage, we feel the anger. I come back to the idea of, if I can't offer love and compassion to those that I'm asking them to show me love and compassion, am I worthy of asking it?
Ooh.
If I can't offer it when it's the hardest, am I worthy of asking for it? If we want this world to show up with compassion and love, and yet we find an excuse to not do that because this person is wrong, this situation is wrong, and my anger in this situation is valid, which it is, but also the love you can show and the compassion is valid if you're asking for it.
Totally. And it's so fitting, because I literally just made a post on my Instagram about conflict resolution and how to have difficult conversations. And that a lot of times we don't think that it's a compassionate thing to actually face conflict or confront issues with our loved ones. And yet that is the work that needs to be done for us to get into deeper levels of loving compassion with one another. That it's like, how can we be more and more authentic in our truth versus just going to hide away, which, yes, not the loving
It's easier.
Right, yeah. Right. So, yes, beautiful reflection. Thank you.
As a storyteller, I don't know if this is something you think about, but it's definitely something that is present in my daily life. The idea of how our entire existence is just a story. Every aspect of it is just a story that was told. The money is a story. The rent, the grocery store is a story. Our own perception of reality is built on the stories that we were giving. And our conflicts, whether it's personal or political, is basically a story and a group of people in many situations just wanting their story to be told in their own voice. And a lot of our conflicts in personal life stems from our inability to just hear the other person's story through their own voice. We project what we want their story to be. And I wonder if that touch on anything for you, as also someone who went and did this film with your parents. They have their story and you're embedded in the story and you're trying to find, which at least that's kind of what I took from the film, finding your own story within theirs and which part of it is yours.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I feel it is essential for us to understand and come from a place of compassion and curiosity when we are doing the storytelling work, or even trying to do this healing work with people that we love, that we have to be able to zoom out to see, how did they become who they were? What is the story that made them who they were? And I feel like, for me, making Traces of Home allowed me to have so much more compassion for my parents, for why they were the way they were, because of their own stories of what happened, and also how their conditioning, of me, of saying, oh, this is right, this is wrong, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't act like this, that it was coming from a colonial mindset that was imprinted on them to be able to survive. And that I think allowed me to release a lot of anger and rage that was so pent up in me that I could see the bigger picture now. And I was like, I understand. It doesn't make it okay, but I understand more deeply.
Yeah, that makes me wonder. As I was watching the film, I was thinking of like how much wasn't there in the film, how much footage, how much dialogue, how many conversations, maybe even off camera or on camera that got to happen. And for the sake of just the flow of the story you had and the limit of time, you had to kind of stick to it. I am wondering which parts that you had to cut away and why.
Yes, this was so hard because we had over 280 hours of footage to go through to get it down to an hour and a half, which is why it took 9 years to make this film. Very, very hard to figure out what to make sure to include and what would be okay to omit. And for me, I feel like the most difficult portions to remove was the tour of Palestine. We did a 3-week tour throughout the West Bank, and it's like we hear what's going on and we see the news, and yet being there and seeing what was happening on the ground, I learned the level of literally apartheid that is currently present, that it felt so important to put all of it into the film, and yet we couldn't add it. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe this needs to be part of like an educational component. But getting to actually hear from first hand testimonials of people and what they've experienced just felt very, very important to add in. So we did get to add in a bit, but that felt related to the Mexico side too. And yet it didn't, there was so much more that we could have gone into as well.
Yeah. How was that for you? Part of what I struggled with, but is part I craved more, is like you hiding behind the camera and I don't get to know what's actually happening internally as you walk, as you arrive to, like, what was that for you going to Palestine? I assume it was the first time, and seeing what you hear about and what you see on TV. What was it like to experience that?
Yeah. Yes. So it was my first time going back to Palestine, and it was really something that, again, that I thought I knew what was happening, but I realized that it was only like the skimming the surface of the depth of trauma and ongoing trauma that was there. And then also seeing the level of care and hospitality and Palestinian culture just like thriving, people being just like, inviting us to their homes, dinners, playing, joking, laughing. It was very emotional to be like, wow, these are the people who are being like literally ripped apart. Like it's so, so hard to witness that level of atrocity. And yet also seeing like, wow, what an honor and a gift to say that this is where I come from, this beautiful land and these people and the culture that is so profoundly, rooted in love, truly rooted in love too. And for Mexico, I also felt like such deep sacredness of the land, and also feeling the trauma of my grandmother, and then also again the resilience too. And so I didn't really add much about my reflections in the film itself. I definitely loved being there, and yet it didn't feel like those places were my home either. And that's when I again started going to therapy to talk about like, okay, what is this ambiguous loss that I'm feeling and this grief that I'm feeling for my own homeland that I never lived in, and that I don't even feel like I have one, truly, that it's just like floating. And so there was a lot of therapy sessions that I actually did record, but we didn't end up putting them in the film either.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that journey was internally and how you processed it. A lot of what we've seen as your parents' journey in that. As you were working on this film and you were filming it, You were very aware of the idea of hiding behind the camera. Do you feel like you were hiding behind the camera?
Yes. Yes. I was definitely hiding behind the camera. There is absolutely no way I would have been able to ask the questions that I was able to do without the interview and the camera setup, or to have the conversation with my mom that happens at the end of the film, where I go really deep into all of the difficulties we had. That the camera became that tool to be able to unpack things that I don't think I would have had the courage to otherwise, to be fully honest. And so, while yes, I was hiding behind it, it was also the tool that allowed me to come back out too. So I'm
How
very
long was that conversation? Because in the film, it was very short
yes.
part.
I would say it was like an hour and a half. Yeah, I think it was about an hour and a half. Yeah.
And what was profound in it?
Mm. Yeah. I think actually what was profound in it is actually in the footage that we kept, that you see me being super vulnerable with my mom and her still keeping her own patterns of the walls, and realizing that, oh, it actually doesn't matter how the other person reacts. It's more for us to be able to finally be in our authentic truth and to release and to say, I don't have to hide anymore. And even if you don't resonate or respond in the way that I hoped, that it's still so healing. And it is still healing for the other person to feel like, okay, at least they felt safe enough to come to me. So I think that was like the piece that was most profound for me, to realize that like it actually doesn't matter what happens on the other end. It's more for us to be able to step into our truth.
It is hard with sharing the story of yourself as an independent adult and your own story of how you grew up in those spaces, especially with parents. I kind of surrendered to that idea and just now let it be the way it is and just enjoy the moment. But there is that part that crave a little bit more of seeing me as who I am today.
Totally.
So watching the film, I was like, I I can see the work that you're putting into building that relationship or rebuilding it,
Yeah.
as now you being an adult, and that friction that comes from, wait, that's not who you are. That's not the version I have in my mind about you.
Yes.
I can imagine the challenges of being like, okay, should I keep pushing? Should I let it go?
And it's like once we start stepping off the beaten path of like, oh, how we should be or what we are considered as, like, I mean, if I could say like typical Arab identity, that it's like, okay, actually, I'm much deeper than all of this cultural norm, that, yeah, I can start to push the buttons a little, and yet it's what will allow for us to, again, allow us to be in our authenticity. And it sort of gives permission for others to do the same as well, to be like, oh, wait, there's another way to live and be. Wow. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
So I commend you for doing the healing as well. For going on the journey. It's not easy.
It is different also for me because my parents are still in Saudi. They still there. I'm kind of far away, and my father passed away in 2023. My mother came to visit a few years ago for the first time. I haven't seen her in
Wow.
back then 13, 14 years or so. And seeing me as an adult versus when I left, I was 19-year-old and I was different in many different way.
Yeah.
So how did I get to present myself? I was struggling with that before they arrived.
Totally.
My mom and my brothers was like, okay, do I just find out how I was before I left, or
Right.
do I just get to be me and hopefully that would be okay.
Yeah.
I just have few tattoos now and bald head.
Oh my goodness. May I ask, how did it go? Did you show up as were you able to hold your center as your
Yeah, I was. I got to be myself, and I realize I don't know how to be anything else. Even when I try, it doesn't work. It was really beautiful and healing to just see her, see my brothers, and see how much time has passed. Like when I left, my brother was one of them was 33-year-old. When they came to visit, I am 33-year-old and he's in his 40s. And I remember sitting in the backyard at my brother's and seeing all of them, my mom, the kids, my brothers, and I'm sitting from a distance just looking at it during sunset and thinking to myself, this is a moment I'll live the rest of my life wanting to come back to. And I'm here now. And just, yeah, it was beautiful.
I'm so glad that you got to be with them. Gosh, how beautiful. Yeah, really, really special. And it's like it's not often that we get to have these moments where it's like, oh, they're still here and we can cherish them while they're still here because we know.
Yeah.
Oh,
We know the moment can pass
right.
It will pass,
Will.
and we get what we get while we're still here. I wonder, how did your parents react to the first screening of the film? Did they get to see it before? Tell me more about the whole thing.
Yes. This is a funny story. So I was freaking out because I was like, oh my goodness, we are gonna. I'm like, I'm just letting it all out. Like the entire bag is going out into the world. And so we held a private screening for them in San Francisco in like a little room, and I made a script and I was like, Mom and Dad, like, thank you so much for being here. Like I was super emotional. And I was like, the intention of why I did this, it was never for me to like bash the family or like let out gossip or anything like that. Like it was for healing. And so I hope that you can be open to this, and thank you so much. And yeah, I'm crying the entire time. And then after it's over, my parents just look at me and they're like, yeah, very good job. And that was it. Literally 3 words. Like, yeah, good. Very nice, Colette. I'm like, what? Like, that's it? And then they started talking about like the edit itself, and they're like, but I don't know about this animation here or this piece here, that they started talking about it in the third person. And I was like, okay, either they've fully healed and they don't feel anything, or they're again having a wall up to watching this. I couldn't tell. But yeah, that was their reaction. That was
Talk about the immigrant parents and avoidance.
Right. There it is. Like, okay, all right, let it in. So as long as I got their blessing, I'm like, okay, that's all that matters. We continue. Yeah. But then afterwards, that's when things started to unpack more. My mom started to open up and like share her deeper feelings. But the first screening was, yeah, much not how I expected it to go at all.
What did you expect?
Yeah, I don't know why I was expecting them to be in like full emotional catharsis and like all hugging, and like all of a sudden everything would just, the floodgates would open. Yeah, I had a different expectation, or that they would be super angry, that they would be like, Colette, what have you made? Like, what have you done? This is not going out into the world. So yeah, to have absolutely no reaction was like, oh, but it makes sense. It makes sense with the walls again and again. Yeah.
I mean, in it also, even that reaction itself is a reaction, right?
Totally.
I can kind of see, I mean, the film itself is very vulnerable and authentic, and you're sharing their emotions, and many ways I can see how hard it is to even get them to be emotional. And when you push, they push back. It's like, no, let's just go.
Yes.
There's like, we're not meant to feel this moment and the weight of it, and it is I mean, in many ways, at least for me in those situations, I end up going to the survival mode of like, I'm not gonna feel it. I'm gonna move forward
Totally.
without this feeling. And
Yeah.
I can see that pattern throughout the film. So it makes sense that yeah, they didn't want to feel anything there.
Right, 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 right. And that's like the norm of us just numbing out and not feeling for so many people. I feel like that is the norm of how we deal with difficult feelings that yeah, it's very hard work to actually stop and feel and have the strength to be vulnerable. So, yes, I don't blame them. Like, of course, it feels that's a protective mechanism that has totally worked and allowed us to survive for so long. And yet now we have the ability to break that pattern.
Yeah. Is there any moments as you guys were traveling, going to these places? I know on camera it was hard for certain emotions to show. Is there any moment off camera in the hotel at night, like any moment where certain emotions showed up and certain process of what this situation mean, what this story mean, where I am right now? Is there anything that you couldn't capture, but it was actually part of them processing?
For my parents specifically?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I'm so glad we were rolling when my dad had like that he had like a very intense reaction entering into Safad, into his hometown. That, yeah, there was an opening for him that was really powerful. Mm, yeah, I mean, seeing my dad with all of the crew and all of the people in Palestine, that I don't feel like we got to show it as much of like the beauty of him feeling home with his people, that it just felt very clear that he was able to be in his authentic self in his own language and with his people, that that I felt like there was something very healing for him to realize, like, oh wait, I actually do belong somewhere, and that like this feeling of not belonging is just because I'm in the US, not with my own people. And so something with that, I think, helped him to feel more safety. For my mom, for my mom, we were filming almost the entire time, so I feel like we were able to go much deeper with her experience. Yeah. Yeah, I think for my mom, it felt pretty on par with her experience.
Wanted to know a little bit about your parents, and because a lot of the footage in the film is like old footage of you and your brother, and it is like a wealth of footage that I was like, I wish I had all these footage, but it's your dad who filmed a lot of that. Can you give us a little bit of a background in that, and how much footage did you end up getting from your dad, and
Yeah.
why was he filming everything?
Yes, yes. So my dad actually studied film in Spain, and his dream was to be a director as well. And so he studied cinematography, and he did films for like the military in Syria, and when he was like drafted. And so he was always around cameras, and like when he came to the US, he wanted to continue in filmmaking, but the language barrier was very difficult, and so he couldn't do it. And yet he did end up using it by doing wedding videography and quinceañeras for like Mexican weddings and birthday parties. And so I was always around cameras and editing when I was younger. And he because of this, he loved filming everything. And so he filmed over 100 hours of VHS footage of like literally from like the 70s to maybe the 2010s, something like that. That it's like, wow, what an act of love. Again, like an act of love to be able to have this entire library of our childhood and our upbringing that he was able to create for us was just like, woo, very, very amazing. And so we used it to be able to illustrate like what was happening in my own upbringing. And I spent like 8 months just tagging and logging all of the footage before even getting into the edit. which, yeah, made it much easier. So, yes, that was my father's huge addition to the film.
What about your mother and her education story?
Yes. So my mom actually studied art before she went into accounting. That she was an artist and she's an amazing painter. She does a lot in that. But again, taking the stable route, having to make sure to have financial stability, she went into accounting and also loves numbers. So she went into that fully. And I think that also helped me with being more practical for producing all of these things that, I got both sides of like the artist brain and then also let's actually follow through on projects too.
Yeah, that is unique and it's beautiful. I resonate so much with your father.
Oh, yeah.
And I always think about what are the mistakes that immigrants get to make when they come here. I'm the person that left, I'm the person who's here. And I grew up most of my life back in Saudi. So the tools that I have in my toolbox are completely different than what I am navigating today. So I ask some of my friends that their parents came to the US and they grew up here. And I'll ask you the same thing. What are the things for someone like me, for someone like your dad, that we should know so we can be better parents, better for being uncle? So I'm not missing on these cues that culturally I'm not trained to see.
Jeez, wow. Thank you for that question. And it's interesting because this film really, it touches on both experiences of like immigrants and then also the children of immigrants, that the people who have immigrated here, like they were like, wow, I feel your dad completely. Or like my mom, the same thing. So yeah, even if they're not in the same generation, it's still a very similar experience. And, in terms of parenting specifically, I think you're already doing the work, Malak. I don't feel like I need to share you to do this. But that you've already done it. But being able to learn how to learn about one's emotions, I think is a very, very big part. And especially for specifically for the masculine, those who are identifying as men in the Arab world, a lot of times, I mean, everywhere really, it's just like this, don't feel, cannot show emotions, and staying, constricted back. And I think that lack of vulnerability, it prevents a feeling of connection for the children and for even anyone, really everyone, that being able to be more vulnerable is the most important thing. And so there is a lot of healing work that needs to be done to be able to get to that level of vulnerability and to feel safe enough to share emotions. And so I would say what would be really great is having community circles of immigrants and people who can talk about their feelings together of what they're experiencing, and being able to be vulnerable with people who get it and are in a similar boat. That having that kind of support and being able to start to open up to those safe people is a great practice too, to be able to do it for children, for the next generation too.
Yeah. Now, how did your brother help with the film, but also then view the film? Can you talk to me about him a little bit?
Yes. So my brother is amazing. His name is Ramsey, and he was literally my mentor throughout my entire life. And then also in this filmmaking process, that he became my mirror to be able to go deeper into what it was that I was trying to figure out. And this very subtle issue of intergenerational trauma, how it was affecting us and our own sense of self growing up. And so Ramsey was really the one who allowed me to be able to unpack. And he was also so courageous in sharing his own story of addiction and lack of self-esteem and him not feeling home at home either. And so I'm so grateful that he was able to be that support throughout the entire process as well.
I'm curious, especially as an older, like he was the first
Yeah.
child, so he got to face some of the kind of learning curve that your parents were going through coming to the US, building their life and also building their relationship to each other and now to the child.
Mm.
So I can only imagine what that was for him. How did he help you with this film, but also how did he help you throughout your journey?
In life in general.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Ramsey has been my role model and my guide since birth. He is such a sensitive and deep soul and such a feeling person that when people say like, oh, my older brother didn't care about me or like all of these things, he ignored me, that was never Ramsey, that he's always been there for me. And that like, yeah, I'm just so grateful that I had such a wonderful brother who I could go to if I was having issues with my parents or having issues with school, people, that kind of thing, that peers, that he was able to support me in that way. And specifically for the film, he was there for the difficult conversations with my parents, that he was just there as a presence. He's like, I don't have to say anything, but if it helps, I'm happy to just be there. And then also he went to Mexico and Palestine with me, and we were able to talk through things and debrief, and it just meant so much to have him as such an anchor, both for the film, but then also in life. Yeah, I've learned so much from my brother. I love him so much. Yeah.
As you finished the film, which year did you finish the film?
Last year, 2025.
So when you finished the film and now it's finalized, it's screening, what did you learn about yourself through the process of making this film?
Oh, yes, so many things. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many things. Thank you so much for this question. This is helping me reflect more deeply too. I think the first thing is that being able to stick with a project for almost a decade, that was like the biggest thing that, I'm so grateful that I had a team that was also propelling me forward to continue making the film. And yet like the persistence of being like, yes, I'm going to make this thing and it will come to completion no matter how long it takes. That I'm so grateful to have been able to have that show in the completion of the film. And then on the other hand, something that also was very important for me to learn was that I still also had a lot of conditioning in myself as a filmmaker. That yes, I'm in documentary and I love storytelling, telling people stories and like being able to use those to do social justice work. And yet there was also a part of me that was totally in it for achievement and accolades and ego and all of the things to be like, yeah, I do film. I'm an artist. And what does that mean, you know? And then I went through my ego death of getting all the film festival rejections. And I was like, wow, I really needed this kick in the butt right now because I was starting to lose my original intention of getting caught up in the film industry. And I think that was something that I had to learn to be like, wow, even if I had the right intentions in the beginning, that it can get very easy to go off course when starting to come into the place of praise and of starting to try to gain value from something external. And so I learned that I need to make sure I have my practices of remembering why I do what I do, especially in a space that's like art and film.
Yeah. What are the moments throughout these 9 years where you just like wanted to give up, just like, this is pointless. What am I doing? What's this? And how did you overcome those moments?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 2 moments come in mind, and both of them were during post-production because the edit was truly the hardest part for me. That was the real work of now, okay, you have to start digging in. Like, what is the story structure? What are you trying to say, Colette? You went to Mexico and Palestine. Like, now what? What is the actual film going to be? And I didn't have any, it's like all of these deeper inner reflections that I hadn't even done yet, that the film became that tool of doing the deeper reflection. And so one day, I was prompted by my editor to make a narration about this, like, what is my intention of making this film? What is the thesis? And making some narration for it. And that was the first round of narration that I was going to have to do. And so I went upstairs into her living room and like had the mic. And I had just moved to San Francisco, and I was also in like the deep grief of a divorce that really destroyed my own, a whole other thing of like destroying my own sense of self and sense of home. And I was just sitting there and like crying and being like, what am I doing? Like, why am I even here? What's the point of any of this? Like, I don't know what the intention of this film is. Like, just feeling like it felt very meaningless, to be honest, that I was like, I don't even know. Like, I just went to Mexico and Palestine and that's it. I don't even know. That was 3 years ago. And then the second round was when we got to a rough cut stage about a year and a half ago. We made a rough cut. Like, we had everything lined up, and it was about, I'd say like 2.5 hours long. And we finished watching it, and it was terrible, Malik. It was terrible. Like, really all over the place, just like storylines, just everything was totally off. And I thought it was going to be like at least okay, like somewhere to start off with. And I looked at my editor and I was like, I'm like, what is this? This is terrible work. I'm like, it's not about you. It's nothing about you. Like, this was my vision, but it's not. This is not it. And she's like, Colette, don't worry. Like, this is just the first draft. We have to make like 40 more drafts until we can get to a polished stage. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to trust her because she's done this so many times before. But I really lost hope at that point too. And I was like, this is going to be a very C-level terrible film. Yeah, it was hard. Very hard. But we kept going. And now I'm very grateful. This is what has been made is like the best version I could have ever dreamt of. Very grateful.
It is really beautiful. And the story arc is incredible.
Thank you.
Emotions, the journey itself. I don't want to put spoiler alerts there, but it is definitely worth watching. And it's an incredible film. I watched it and I had to sit kind of to reflect on a lot of the story itself and also imagining what is not part of the film. And I can like only imagine the emotional toll that it takes to put a story together like that when it is your story, your parents' story, and you are trying to find yourself in it. And yeah, it is really powerful.
Thank you. It's a lot.
How was the premiere of the film?
Yes. Oh my goodness. It was surreal. It was a dream. Truly. I still can't wrap my head around that actually happened. We premiered in New York in DOC NYC, which is like the largest documentary film festival in the US. And I was in total burnout exhaustion mode at that stage. And I was like at mile 26 of the marathon and just like ready to tap out. And being at the festival and seeing the audience's reactions and like people just having their full emotional catharsis in the theater, that I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that it was going to touch people in the way that it did. And it totally caught me off guard. I was shocked by the reception of the film. And then even more shocked that it went off to win Best Documentary, that I was just like, how in the world? This tiny film about my family that it got, just wow, what a blessing, what a gift. And so it was so special also to have my entire family there and the entire team, that it felt like a real completion and celebration of this really epic saga of a journey that we all went on, and to get to do it with so many people was wow, incredible, surreal. Yeah, I was like, I'm like, this can't be real. Like somebody wake me up. Yes. Yeah.
Is there any comment or feedback or anything that you heard from the audience that stayed with you?
Yes. Yeah, one person told me that after watching the film, they actually had their parents watch the film because it was streaming online at the same time. They had their parents watch the film like a few days later, and then they had like a 3-hour discussion about all of the dysfunction in their family and like talked about things they never talked about before either. And they like sent that message in and they're like, "Thank you for healing me and my family." Like, yeah, like, wow. It's really amazing to get to see that like real time healing happening for people, that it can feel so impossible to do that with our parents. So that one really stuck with me a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, when you make art, you don't get to tell where it's gonna go, what people are gonna do with it is in the same way. You all also use the same poem of children from Gibran Khalil Gibran. I just changed it to when you make art, it comes through you, not from you. Although it's with you, it belongs not to you. You don't get to tell what the journey of that piece get to go on and do its thing. And it's beautiful that you hear those stories. And I'm sure there are other stories that you probably wouldn't even know existed because people watched the film. So, where can people watch the film?
Yes. So we are currently on the festival circuit. So we're just traveling throughout the US and now starting to apply to international festivals. And so definitely keeping a lookout for that. And then we are starting our theatrical circuit in the fall with Watermelon Pictures. And so I would say for them to get onto our mailing list at tracesofhome.com to see when it's coming to their city. And then it'll be streaming next year on Watermelon Pictures as well. And PBS. Yes.
If there is one sentence that you can articulate the emotion that you had throughout the entire process of making this and screening it now, what would that be?
What emotion would I say?
Like, yeah, how would you describe the emotional journey of 10 years, 9 years
Yes.
from start to finish?
It was a washing machine. I would say it was a washing machine. Like, toss, turn, boom, boom, in all of the ways, just circling through, going in circles and circles and circles and circles, and then finally being purified and cleansed at the end to come out. A washing machine. Totally.
I say that about a lot of my days. It's like, how are you feeling? I'm like, feels like I'm inside a washing machine.
Really?
I don't know what's up, what's down. I'm just trying to figure it out and come out alive.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Truly, truly. That's the only way. We're just waiting in the washing machine. But at least
and hopefully we come out.
Yeah, right. At least we're in it together. That's all that matters, That makes it easier. Like, okay,
Yeah.
we're on the ride together. Yes.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being open to this conversation and sharing the process, the journey of making something as powerful and special as this film.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to get to share and for amplifying our voices. It really means a lot. Yeah. You're doing the work too, You're doing the work.
I'm in the washing machine.
Yes, but we show up anyways. We keep showing up.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Malik.